how do you create success? Yes, there are specific actions and behaviors that we need to take in order to be able to create success, but success really truly starts here before anything else. And so what do we need to do? What is the internal things that we need to have in alignment in order to be able to create success where it comes automatically, where you no longer have to worry about motivation of what to do next because the behaviors are already in alignment with what it is that you want to create because you've got everything so centered on the inside. And so everything is all about how do we create success where it happens automatically. And so studying about success has really got me thinking, like, I want to dive deeper into this topic. Now, success looks different for everybody, but there are universal principles that can be applied in any situation, regardless of what it is that you're working towards. It could be something business, it could be something personal. But what are the underlying principles that we reach every single time we want to be able to achieve success? So we're starting a new series today, which I'm really, really excited about. Most of you hopefully have heard of an incredible man named Napoleon Hill. So we're going to go through some of the works of Napoleon Hill and how do you create success from the things that he learned. Now, I'm not going to just regurgitate what he said, but I want to take it into modern day, into today. How do we create success today? Because Napoleon Hill lived in the early 1900s. He was really famous for his work in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and even into the 50s. And so how do we take the principles that he learned and apply them into today? So we're going to be going through this book together. Most people are going to know Think and Grow Rich. That is really where his work took off. Most people have not gone through and read the 16 Laws of Success. So this is what we're going to be going through. You can see it's a pretty big read. It's over 600 pages, and it's not a really easy read, to be honest. They just spoke differently almost 100 years ago. And so it's not an easy read, but I want to take the principles that he teaches in this book and learn how to apply them into today. And so this is what we're going to be going over the next several weeks. We're going to be taking one of these laws at a time and pulling out the principles that you need to know in order to be able to create that success. So today we're going to be talking about the biggest thing that holds people back when we are creating success. If you look at your life and you look at the areas that you have wanted to be successful and you have continued to fall short, you can always bring it back to one of these 6 main fears that are brought up in life. These are the things, they're the principles that anytime you face failure, you're not reaching that level of success that you want, is because of one of these 6 fears. So we first need to understand, before we get into the fears, we need to understand where fear comes from. It always is going to come from one of 2 places. First, the fear comes because it is a learned behavior. We all grew up in different circumstances, different family dynamics, but we learned from our parents what was safe in the world. Now, if they had fears that they brought into their parenting, you're going to learn those same behaviors because we learn by mimicking. We learn by, oh, that's how we do these things. This is how we interact. And so you learn fears, you inherit fears from your parents, but we also learn them from other places, not just your parents. We watch other people go through experiences that is like, oh, I don't ever want to go through that. That looked so hard. I don't want to experience that. And so we learn to pick up on their fears. We learn to behave the way either that they did or opposite of how they did, but we learn those behaviors from observing other people, whether it is your parents or a teacher or a friend or somebody who had influence in your life. We learn to take on these fears from other people. The second way that we bring fears into our life is we accept them. So we go through an experience. We take on those fears because we faced failure. And so now we have a fear of something. We have gone through and that didn't yield into an experience that I wanted to have. That backfired on me. And we accept fears as truth because of the things that we have experienced. So we're either learning them or we're accepting them. It always is going to come down to one of those two things. Because we know that, we now can take these fears and say, okay, do I need to unlearn a behavior or do I need to choose into something else? And so knowing where they came from is going to help you be able to figure out, how do I overcome those things? And so as we go through these 6 fears, I want you to just pay attention to the thoughts that are going through your head. Did your parents do something like that? Or did you see somebody struggle with that? Or did you experience something? And just make a note. Is this learned or is this accepted? Because that's what's going to help get you to a point where you know how to overcome these fears. So the first fear that we're going to go into is a fear of lack. When we are going through experiences, we tend to go to a place where there's never enough. There's never enough money. There's never enough time. There's never enough networking, relationships. There's never enough. We see this a lot in business because, oh, this area is so saturated. There is a fear of lack. We don't want to be in lack. It is actually not how we are designed. You are designed, you're created to have abundance in your life. And when we feel lack, we become afraid of it because it is not something that we want to experience. So we have this fear of lack, the things that we don't have in our life. Second is the fear of unknown. We don't know what life is going to bring us. We don't know where it is that we are going. This is a fear of getting older, because we don't know what life is going to bring. There's so much unknown. We don't know what's going to happen next week. We don't know what's going to happen in 5 years and 10 years and 30 years. And so we accept this fear of the unknown and we become afraid of stepping forward. I was working with a client the other day who was struggling with this fear of the unknown because he was watching a grandparent go through Alzheimer's. He was watching all of this, and is that going to happen to him? And so he started fearing the future because he didn't know what the future was going to bring. It is a fear of the unknown that keeps us stuck in our past, in the things that we feel like are unknown, even though they're uncomfortable. The third fear that we face is fear of being out of control, having things that are not helping or that I don't have any control over. We saw this so often when we were working through COVID. As a global society, it was affecting everyone everywhere. And we didn't know if we went to the grocery store, was I going to be affected by this? And so it created this fear that I am not in control of the things that are going on around me. We had this fear of, if this happens, then that's going to happen, and I don't get to control the consequences of that. And so this fear of being out of control starts to play all of these what ifs in your head. If this, then that. I can control some of the if, but I cannot control then. And because of that, I get out of control and I all of a sudden can't show up the way that I want to because things are out of my control. The next one is a fear of loss. When we work so hard to gain the things that we have, you work really hard in a job, or you work really hard in your business, you work really hard to create income, and all of a sudden that gets taken away from you. This evidence that is built up of all of the effort that you've put in, all of a sudden the rug gets pulled out from underneath you and you are left with, like, you're stunned. I don't know what happened. And it's this fear of loss that perpetuates that. because we don't want to have all of our effort be for nothing. And so we fear losing loved ones. We fear losing what we already have. Maybe it's a home, maybe it's an income, maybe it is a car, whatever it is. But we fear losing the things that we have as if we had possession of them in the first place. A lot of things are, maybe that's a topic for another video, but we are just stewards of things. We actually don't own much. We become stewards of the things in our life. And so this fear of loss actually pulls us out of a place of being a good steward of the things that we do have. The next is a fear of judgment. As we interact in the world, we think, what will other people think of me? What will they say to me? We fear other people's opinions more than our own self-reflection. When we do the self-reflection and what do I think about how I'm showing up and how I'm behaving? That holds very little weight in comparison to other people and what they think. And so we fear being criticized. We fear about, how it's going to be perceived and what happens if. All of those things is this fear of judgment that happens when we fear success or failure. It really comes down to this fear of judgment. What is going to happen? What is the perceived value of other people? And this fear of judgment keeps you from showing up in places because we fear about other people and their opinions. The last one is a fear of death. Now, we all know that we are human beings, we are immortal. And because there's no documented, scripted out, like as soon as you die, there's this. People have beliefs and they have their own opinions, which helps to overcome this fear. But because we don't know what happens next, the biggest questions of life is, why am I here? What am I doing? Where am I going after this life? We don't know the answers to those questions. And so it puts us in this state of fear. And when you are in this place, anytime there is a threat of your safety, your brain easily goes into this idea of death. Now, fear of death is one that is very, very sneaky and goes below the surface under a lot of different things, because I actually think fear of success falls under this one, because we go into a space where if I am working towards this goal, I'm working towards, that next income goal or that next milestone, and you keep falling short of that and you don't ever reach it, it's oftentimes because we don't know the after story. We don't know what comes next. So your brain equates that to, if once I reach that goal, there's nothing else, and so I die. And we don't associate those things because logically we know I'm not going to die if I reach that goal. If I make 6 figures, 7 figures, 8 figures, I'm not going to die if I reach those things. Consciously, we know that. But do you know what happens because you reach that? What happens after you reach that goal? If you don't know what happens next, your brain will literally equate that to death. And so we don't reach those things because we don't know what is next. We don't know where we're going after this. We don't know what happens. And that creates within us this fear of dying. You hear people talk all the time in this mindset space about your brain's number one job is safety. When safety is triggered, the underlying fear behind that is death. Always. Always, always. When you fear death, you don't do simple little things like go to the grocery store or talk to that person about your offer or go out and try and sell this product, whatever it is. We don't do the simple little things because of this fear. It plays a much bigger role in your life than you anticipate. So what do? These are our 6 fears. The fear of the unknown, the fear of being out of control, the fear of loss, the fear of judgment, the fear of death. What do we do when we are faced with these fears, especially when you are faced with multiple fears? First, you need to recognize how they're showing up in your life. There are 3 indicators that you are facing a life of fear. And you will know every time that fear is behind it when you're seeing one of these 3 things. Okay. The first is you're blaming other people. It's not my fault. It was so and so, it was your business partner, it was the economy, it was COVID, it was whatever. You're blaming other things because we don't take responsibility. Every time you blame someone else for different behaviors, different circumstances, or outcomes, every time you blame, there's an underlying root of fear. And it is always going to come down to one of these 6 that we talked about. The second sign that you are facing a life of fear is that you justify. Well, I did that because you feel like you have to justify your behavior. Now, we do this even in good circumstances. This is not just justifying why I had this bad behavior. There are times that you're working towards something good and we justify why we have to have that goal. We justify what it is that you want. And so you say, I want to make $1 million. And that's a fine goal, but you have people who challenge that. Well, why? Why do you need $1 million? What is it that's going to, like, why are you deserving of $1 million? And we justify, well, I want it because I want to be able to do this. And we start to justify our good goals. That justification is an indicator that you have fear below that. And so you're going to struggle with self-sabotage along the way. You will sabotage yourself all the way. You may reach it because you are determined and you are focused. You're going to get there. But you will have a lot more dips along the way on this journey up the mountain than you will if we just were able to remove the fear in the first place. All right. The third one, the third indicator that you are facing a fear is that you complain. It's a really easy one to do. We complain like, I have this goal. I really, really, really want this, but it just never happens for me. Or we say like, my life is just too busy. I have too many kids. I don't have enough time. And we complain about all of the little things that happen in our life over and over and over again. I can tell you that I have experienced all of those. I've experienced every one of these fears. I've experienced every one of the signs, and I have watched as these signs and things that I didn't think that I was fearful, yet I was complaining about things. I was talking about a good goal, something that I'm working towards, something that gets me excited. And paired with that is also complaining that my behavior isn't exactly where I want it, or I just don't have enough time to get it done. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough resources. I don't have enough to see the fear of lack there. There's never enough. Oftentimes we complain because of these underlying fears. If you want to be able to reach the level of success, watch for blaming, watch for justification and complaining, because those are your indicators that you have fear running underneath the surface. And as long as we're running that program, you're never going to reach what it is that you want to do. So, how do we overcome this? We recognize that there are signs indicating that we do have one of these fears. Maybe we have multiple of these fears. What is it that you do? Ignorance is a sister to fear. And as long as we live in ignorance, fear is always going to be allowed to stay. So if you want to overcome fear, you have to equip yourself with knowledge. Knowledge brings a light to things. It activates your faith to be able to continue to move forward. When we receive knowledge about so let's take, for example, the fear of lack. You need to study both sides. Study lack. What is it like? What road am I heading on? If I continue this way, I continue to allow this fear, where is it that I'm heading? And you need to know that side, but you also need to understand, what does abundance look like? Study people who have achieved abundance. Study people who've got to the level of abundance that you want to receive, whether that is financial or time or freedoms. Find that abundance that you are looking for and study it. Equip yourself with knowledge. How did they get there? How did they lose it? How do they gain it back? What are the things that we need to do in order to be able to achieve that level of abundance? That is the only way to overcome fear, because it is in direct correlation where you can see, I understand how people stay in this place of lack. I understand how people achieve abundance. If things feel out of control and you don't know how to bring it all back in, study people's lives who literally are out of control, and then study people who accept responsibility for the things that they do. Who are those people that have so much responsibility that everything falls on them? They take ownership of everything. Now, this is not in a victim way of like, oh my gosh, I am the one who's always in trouble. Don't go into victim, because that puts us back into a state of blaming where we have to come back to this cycle over and over again. When you understand that knowledge creates power in your life, you then step into your power, the power that you were always meant to hold. When you equip yourself with knowledge, it puts you into a place where you are able to understand that there is always going to be opposition in everything that you do. There are going to be ups, there are going to be downs. Even when you are on your path to success, there are going to be ups and downs, because there is opposition in all things. That is a universal principle. There is opposition everywhere we go. But when you understand the opposition, it allows you to climb higher. It allows you to take to the next peak. It allows you to say, am I going to choose the life of lack, or am I going to choose a life of abundance? Am I going to choose a life of fearing judgment of other people, or am I going to take to the self-reflection and figure out what it is that I need to do? Am I going to choose a life where I'm constantly fearing that I'm not safe, that I'm not protected, that I'm in this state of always worrying about what is going to be taken from me? Or am I going to step into a place where I enjoy life, where I enjoy the things that I'm creating and choose into something different? When you have knowledge, it activates your agency. It activates your ability to choose. That will never be taken away from you, regardless of what happens on a government level or on a social level or in any experience that you go to. We see this over and over again when you study victims of Holocaust, people like Viktor Frankl and Carrie ten Boom. They literally had even the clothes from their back were stripped from them. But Viktor Frankl talks about that he knew the exact moment that somebody would die, because everything had been taken from them and they no longer could choose hope. That personal choice that you have is the last thing that will ever be taken from you. It is always your right to step in and choose what happens to you. Anytime you step into a place where I don't get to choose what happens to me, we step back into one of these fears that I'm out of control. I no longer can accept responsibility. We step into the state of victim because I don't get to choose. But the truth is, you always have a choice. And equipping yourself with knowledge allows you to step into that state of choice. It allows you to activate the things that are inside you that are inherently yours. You always have that option to choose into what it is that you are struggling with. So I want you to take a moment. And I want you to look at all of these fears. Do you see signs in your life of that blaming and justification and complaining, even in the very smallest ways? Do you see how fear is running under the surface? If you notice one of those fears, I want you to take a step back. I want you to say, what is it that I need to do in order to be able to create a different outcome? Equip yourself with knowledge and put yourself back in a place where you have power to be able to choose, because that is the only thing that's going to help you overcome fear. I hope you have a fabulous day. Thank you so much for joining me, and we'll see you all next week. Bye.